I can only speak from my own experience of Belton and where I grew up. That's what I can speak from. That it's a traditional agricultural. That it was an agricultural festival, a time of purification for animals and for humans, I guess, but mainly because of the animals. That there was two fires, and one fire was high and one was low, and all the stock was driven through these fires on May Eve, and it was about keeping your family of animals, pets, everything safe for the summer, because summer was the time of a lot of diseases too, airborne insects, you know. So that's its foundation as an agricultural people, that they had this celebration of new life, and it coincides with the hawthorn. It does like go back to when Christianity came to Ireland. It did incorporate, move some of these Celtic pagan festival dates, move them to suit the church holidays, and in that way they kind of control the paganism, the pagan urge in the Irish people by incorporating these festivals. And when I grew up, there was a May festival in honour of the Virgin Mary. When the Virgin Mary was paraded through the streets, and all my neighbours, and when I grew up in Ennis, they would bring the hawthorn and they would deck all the hallways with the hawthorn and ivy and bring all the green in where the Virgin Mary was passed. And I mean, when we look back now on that, we see it's the goddess. I mean, the Virgin Mary now has assumed the role of the flower goddess, the spring flower goddess, and she's been paraded down the streets. And in order to welcome her and to acknowledge her, everybody dresses their houses in the maythorn, in the flower. So we do see how Catholicism took over the May festival and made it in honour of the Virgin Mary, who is another goddess. I guess I asked questions. At 17, when I was big enough, I wasn't afraid physically anymore about being abused, being punished. And I started asking questions. I was very different from Percival. Percival in the Grail sets out, his mother warns him, always respect women and never ask too many questions. And because of that, Percival, it's only at the end of Percival's lives he achieves the Grail. Well, I'm afraid I was very different. I started asking questions as soon as I was big enough and not afraid to ask questions. And when I grew up, I saw standing stones. I saw temples, stone temples. I saw mounds. I saw this land, this magical land outside the border of the town, which the educational system hadn't acknowledged, didn't even exist. This other world of stones, of mounds, of temples. Who are these people?
Nobody teaches that.
Nobody ever said anything in our educational system. It was Greek was the epitome of civilization, and the Latin and the Romans brought civilization. And yet there was a whole Stone Age civilization all around us. So my quest began very early on in my 20s. I started looking at these standing stones, and nothing there, no acknowledgement at all from the people. And I moved to the countryside and to a place in West Clare, Mount Callan. It's a tabletop mountain, and on the slopes of Mount Callan there was a Laba Diarmid was Grania, which is the Gaelic for these dolmens. Druid's altar stones is another folk term for these places. And there was in around the beginning of the 20th century, around 1911, there used to be a Lunasa pattern. Now Lunasa is the other Celtic fire festival, like Beltane, which is celebrated in the last Sunday in July or the 1st of August. It's August Lunasa time. And they used to go to this place in the mountain called Bullinagrania, the place of the sun. And there was a mound there, and all the local girls used to bring a garland of flowers, and they had a fiddle player, and they had a bit of Mountain Dew, and they had a great time acknowledging the festival, the fruits of the earth. And the local parish priest didn't agree with this festival in the mountains and couldn't control it, but kind of it was under the radar, and allowed it. It couldn't stop it really. Just this went on. These are the funny traditions of the country people, in West Clare in Ireland. So this was going on since time began, since the time of the goddess, since before Christianity, obviously, this fire festival. up in this Bulli Negrenia, the place of the sun in the mountain. And the curious thing, what happened was that before archaeology acknowledged these stone temples and stone circles and researched their possible uses in the Druids, before all this was common knowledge, the first archaeologists in Ireland were antiquarians. Antiquarian is a name for these. They were usually gentry, people with a lot of time on their hands, studying these quaint Irish places and customs, studying the stones. They were the only people that had time. So these were the first amateur archaeologists, antiquarians. And the story goes that this place in West Clare, there was a Protestant rector, and he was an antiquarian. He, on his days off, studied the Irish folk customs, folk traditions, places, Lunasa celebrations, and he researched this Lunasa fire festival at this place of the sun, and he discovered that Lu was a pagan god, was a sun god, a harvest sun god, and he wrote about it, and because the Protestant priest would be invited to dinner in the landlord's house, and maybe the Catholic priest would be invited on for a good debate, over theology. This now came to the attention of the priest, the Catholic priest, and the Protestant rector said, you do know that your parishioners are reenacting a pagan festival. Mm-hmm. And of course the parish priest, at that stage, it was out. It was common knowledge, and the parish priest stopped the festival, brought it down to a different place, relocated the festival on a different day, and of course the festival fell apart, it died out. That was the Harvest Festival. Now where I come in, I was 21 when I moved to this part of Clare, and one evening, it was May Eve, it was the last day of April, and this was the traditional night of the fire. It was the day before the 1st of May, it was the last day of April, and driving back to our cottage in West Clare, I can always remember seeing these fires on the hills, and I said to Jerry, my friend, I said, Jerry, look, that's a fire, look. He said, no, they're burning the mountain, they usually burn the gorse. I said, no, look, it's on the peaks, and they're not spreading fires, they're beacon fires. I said, Jerry, maybe I said that all this time the Irish people are pagan all along, but they just kept it undercover, and they're still lighting the Beltane, as I said, well, I tell you what we'll do. I said, we'll go into McCarthy's pub. Now, McCarthy's pub, this was 1970s Ireland, when you'd still have the donkeys and people still went to market on a horse and car. So I said to Jerry, I said, look, we'll go into McCarthy's bar, and we'll find out about this. Are we looking at Beltane fires in the hills still? And so we went into McCarthy's bar, and you have to picture McCarthy's bar was an old style bar. You're sitting in Mrs. McCarthy's kitchen with linoleum, what's it called, lino on the ground, a plastic lino, and up on here was the picture of Jesus Christ with the open heart and a light underneath, and over in the other corner you had Kennedy and the Pope and some other who was it? You had a kind of a trinity of Irish stars, here, and a clock that went tick tock, tick tock. So we came in, we sat down with Miss McCarthy. Could we have 2 pints again, please? And it was as slow a pint as slow can be. And I remember it came out, it was a wonderful pint, and there was 2 old men over here with the caps just like I'm wearing, sitting over in the corner, just watching us, watching the townies, the lads from the town, smart boys, and nothing was said. We were just sitting there waiting for the pint. So I got my pint of Guinness, and I always remember looking up at Jesus here, and looking up at Kennedy here, and Mrs. McCarthy there, and the 2 old boys. I said, I couldn't hold it any longer. I said, you know what? We were coming over the mountain, and we saw the fire up on the beacon hill. I said, was that a Beltane? And there was silence, absolute silence. Nobody acknowledged, like I had said nothing. There was no yes or no, not even an acknowledgement. I had asked a question, and I understand now why, because that's what they had already lost the Lunasa festival, because somebody had identified Lunasa as a fire festival to the god Lu. They didn't want to lose another fire. A nosy fella from the town asking the awkward question was, are we looking at, in other words, are you still a pagan people that you're lighting the Beltane? And they were, and they still are.